JRG projects for 10, despite the evidence, I don't think these crimes will be acted on by the current DOJ. If anything, Iger may benefit from a favorable federal government. Florida, on the other hand, is a different story. Well, that last line, JRG, is the key. I don't think there's any federal Department of Justice things per se here. There are certainly violations, if I'm not mistaken, Ron, of state statutes for sure when it comes to...
No, there are a lot of security law issues that seem to have been raised here.
Well, security, no, I agree with you. I was going to say MSRB, SEC. I don't know, does that fall under the purview of the overall Department of Justice, or would it be those individual regulatory boards that would take action?
So those regulatory agencies have their own enforcement, but the DOJ in parallel can bring and does bring, for example, Sam Bankman-Fried was prosecuted by the Department of Justice for basically what amounted to... Remember that just about every kind of securities fraud is also wire fraud. And by the way, how many people predicted that Sam Bankman-Fried would be, untouchable because he was such a big Democrat donor and he would get a slap on the wrist. So, don't be quite so cynical. I understand why one might be, but this is a big embarrassment.
It is, and it seems like the amount of evidence that's being presented, the number and severity of these alleged wrongdoings, it seems too much to me to just ignore. You can't just make this disappear and go away.
What do you guys make of the fact that it may have been that Disney was committing these issues with other major financial institutions? I mean, does that really? I'm trying to figure out why investors still haven't woken up to this yet. It feels very sleepy in the news. You would think that this would be massive investment news all over the financial publications, and so far nothing.
One would think. Yeah, one would think.
But it's hard for me to believe that any of these, financial institutions would willingly go along with something like this. It is so, it's just so over the top. I mean, what strikes me as much more likely is that they failed at doing due diligence the way they did with Sam Bankman-Fried and FBX, much for the same reason. They were snowed by a media narrative that told them that this is Disney. We don't have to worry about Disney. Of all the companies out there, we don't have to worry about Disney, right? They tell us that this is on the up and up. This is on the up and up. And I mean, you make a very good point, bro. I mean, every one of these bonds is an underwriter.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I mean, this is a multi-layered failure here, if these allegations are true.
Yeah, and that's just it. And Disney being directly involved in many of these bond underwritings, even right down to email us at Disney about these RCID bonds.
I think, in 80 plus pages of awfulness, that's one of the most damning things in the entire set of documents. That's just bad. I mean, that's really, there's no way out of that one.
And the amazing thing is they sued the state of Florida over its, over the legislation, thinking they had to have been banking, now looking at this, on a slam dunk. To mix sports metaphors, that was a Hail Mary, because the only way they could prevent this stuff from happening, these revelations from coming out, was by immediately getting a judge to agree that the state of Florida should be enjoined from replacing the old system with the new system and the old board with the new board. And the new board could then go back to shredding and back to, even then that was a short term, but what they've done is brought all this heat down on themselves. It's mind-boggling. The legal, and I am very confident that the lawyers involved had no idea what was lurking under this. No, I mean, the outside firms, because nobody.
Oh, yeah.
Well, they didn't understand it. And Valiant and I were on this show about a year ago, I think, and we didn't know all of this, but we knew enough of it, just from public record, that when Disney was making these decisions, we literally came on the show, and Valiant, you were saying to them, Disney, listen, do not do this. We know that this is a horrible mistake. You should stop now. And we weren't saying that because we wanted to insert ourselves into the culture war and weigh in on the issue with when you should teach children bedroom issues according to state curriculum, all that. I mean, that's happy to weigh in if we need to, but it was strictly a financial statement that Valiant was saying, don't do this. This is asinine. And they did it anyway. And the pixie dusting media out there, they crowed about it the whole way while we said, this is doomsday. You're leading to your own doomsday.
Disney firmly believed that the state of Florida, not even Ron DeSantis, would have the political will to go to the floor of the legislature and do what they did and say, that's it, we've had enough. The 1967 deal is verboten. It's gone. It's done. It's over. That's it. They had every right to do it. Disney didn't think they would. I mean, I think that's the level of arrogance and narcissism and self-importance that Disney has given itself, that they're God in Florida and nobody is going to strike at God. Well, it happened, so, and then of course,
by the way, I mean, you talk and Val about how far back the records don't go.
Mm-hmm.
These practices inevitably precede Bob Iger.
Yes.
Oh, yeah. The whole thing about 1998 is when the change was made. They didn't have express financial records. 98, I think is what he said. Until 1998, everybody at RCID was a Disney employee. So that would have changed under Michael Eisner. In 2004, they pushed Celebration Florida out. That was about a year before Bob Iger came in, right? They de-annexed Celebration because they didn't want, we can't have those people voting. And one of the other experts is going to talk about that as well. So we'll get there. Jeremy Winfield, member for 5 months. Could this get any worse for Daddy Iger? The Reedy Creek scandal has to be on his mind. That guy doesn't look like he's built for prison. Look, I will say, thinking that to what Ron was saying earlier and Pro was saying and Mike was saying and I've been saying, we all understand the level of skepticism that something would actually happen to Disney as a company in terms of real investigations, federal regulatory bodies coming in. Certainly the state of Florida is going to be the first one jumping into this because of what's happening in the state of Florida with them. But it's probably going to happen. It's too hard to ignore. But as far as Bob Iger, the CEO of the company winding up being frog marched out in handcuffs and going to jail, no, that's probably not going to happen. But as far as investigations against the company itself, yes, I would think so. It's like I said, it's too much to ignore at this point. Captain Overkill for $25. Thank you, Captain Overkill. No chance Iger or anyone from Disney goes to jail. Well, there we go. What happens is Iger or a successor sits down with the state of Florida, reaches a settlement, and accepts the state's authority, pays some big money, a fine, and the lawsuits go away. I don't, Ron, you want to take that one? Because I can see you shaking your head. But you go ahead and take that one.
You could come to a global settlement with the state of Florida and all its various agencies. But let's go with this concept that the feds won't do anything because they're an entirely politicized, agency. I get that too, but that's not going to make any private lawsuits go away. There are going to be shareholder lawsuits. There are going to be bondholder lawsuits. I mean, it is. I might have trouble getting to sleep tonight just thinking of how many lawsuits are possible. I might have to get
federal SEC, federal IRS, state of Florida.
I'm saying even if you want to say, and I think that Captain Overkill didn't necessarily mean all the lawsuits go. It didn't necessarily mean that you make everything go away. These civil lawsuits and themselves could be, and then of course there are the lawsuits that the various lawsuits that could be brought by Reedy Creek and its citizens and its taxpayers.
Yeah, and it's those other taxpayers too that are going to make a big difference. We're going to have that part of the video coming up in just a minute.
I still want to be the one who is doing the live stream when we're following Bob Iger and the Bronco traveling down the interstate while we watch from helicopter. That's
at 30 miles
still
an hour.
my dream.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you, Captain Overkill. Tax Guy 99 for $1.99, and hail to the $1.99 out there that might be watching right now. We love you guys. Mike, my CPA census say RCID equals Enron level crap. Maybe. Enron, that was scale-wise, Enron certainly is much bigger.
Enron was a securities fraud against the average retail investor, and that's why that was such an issue. Mm-hmm. In this case, you've got not so much a retail investor issue as you have other stuff. But, I mean, it's pretty thermonuclear. It's just, how do I say this? I think Enron was one major thermonuclear warhead. This is a vast, multiple target independent reentry vehicle nuclear, like boom, 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 boom.
It is a less straightforward narrative. You're certainly right about that. It is, it's, which might be part of the reason that the drive-by media hasn't driven by yet, because it's kind of hard to understand. It's not, believe me, it ain't rocket science hard to understand, especially if you watch, if you watch a couple of Andrew's videos or his episode on Culmination with me, where he walked through it a month or two ago. But it's still not as straightforward, as you point out, as just plain lying about saying that losing money equals making money, like they did in Enron.
Yeah. And the other thing, too, that, I mean, the similar feature here that we don't know for sure yet, but certainly could come to light, it's very possible, depending on how tight these relationships were. Enron, one of the big things that people forget is that it wasn't just Enron that went down. It was their accounting and auditing firm, Arthur Andersen, that went down with them because they were complicit. The Walt Disney Company has had the same auditor for 90 years. Mike, what's their name again?
1938. The same auditor. That in and of itself is an irregularity, because most of the time Fortune 500 companies rotate in and out the audit firm of record. Formerly the Big 12, then turned into the Big 10, then the Big 8, then the 6, and then the 4. And now it's KPMG, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Deloitte, and Ernst & Young. Normally what happens is that every 4 to 7 years-ish, give or take, they put it out to bid, and another one of the big four rotates in, and the one that was there rotates out. That is legit. Why? Because if there's skeletons in the closet and you have nothing to hide, then there's no problem of bringing in another independent audit group, and let's see what their opinion is about our internal controls. Let's see what their internal procedures are.
But that'd be so surprised if that wasn't mentioned in the audit.
It's
right.
Imagine that. Imagine that.
Yeah.
I mean, here's the thing. There are now generational transfer of knowledge of PwC related to how to handle Disney.
Multi-generational.
And this morning on Andrew's stream, I mentioned it the other day when I was on a live stream with Jonas, and this morning I went deeper and harder about this internship program that exists by PwC. So if you're going to be in college and you get a job offer to go to PwC, you get sent to Disney World for an internship experience, which is essentially a paid-for vacation. It's not like it's training where they're going to say, oh, it's an internship where you're going to learn audit skills and random sampling techniques. And,
does that sound familiar? Does that sound something like what Disney was doing with RCID? I mean, it sounds.
Imagine that.
It sounds like the same story.
Imagine that.
Wow. Not making any accusations here against PwC or anybody. It's curious. It's curious. Just throwing it out there for people's appetite for intellectual ponderances. Bass player.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm just saying. Forget about it. Make sure you're subscribed to Valiant Renegade and join us every Sunday at 6 p.m. Eastern for the live show.